Watch this.
It's Friday. You know what that means? It's time to end the first week of 2024 here on the 208. And ahead, we got a lot to dive into.
Young kids and older adults, they remain at higher risk.
A leading Idaho medical expert says, whether you like it or not, Idaho and the nation is seeing a rising level of COVID infections. But the messaging in 2024 is much different than we saw in years past. We're getting into the realities of that conversation. And it is the first week of the new year. We wasted no time diving into the deep end of stories. And you had some excellent questions about our top stories this week, and we have answers. And on the ice, the Idaho Steelheads have a very familiar face back with the squad. We're catching up with fan favorite Will Merchant, who's excited to be back playing hockey in the City of Trees. Look out, we got a big weekend ahead on the ice. Out of sight, out of mind. It's a common saying, but far from reality for some public health officials, because COVID wastewater data suggests that we're due for a big spike in infections. Retired St. Luke's CEO Dr. David Pate tweeted earlier this week. He says that national numbers suggest that we're on our way to the second highest COVID spike ever. He expects 1 in 3 people to get infected. Remember Delta? Remember Omicron? Well, how does this even compare? Well, Dr. Pate tells our Andrew Bartline, we're simply in different times now.
Nearly 4 years since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, some of the most clear answers are found in unclean waters.
And a lot of people just aren't even testing. Wastewater has been a much better predictor and correlator.
And Dr. David Pate,
Yeah.
he noticed a new concerning trend. It revolves around a new COVID variant, JN1.
1 week, there was no JN1 here in the Treasure Valley. And then the next week, it was reported it was 77% of all the sequences they've got. Never seen that before.
COVID's peaking.
A recent study out of Dr. Greg Hampikian's lab at Boise State University shows COVID wastewater spikes predict a rise in hospitalizations.
And that's computer predicted.
2 weeks in advance. Deaths follow by 3 weeks.
The average normal healthy person, I feel like, isn't all that concerned about this, though. Should they be?
They shouldn't be panicked or paralyzed, but they shouldn't be complacent either.
Pate's mostly concerned with children, even more so with babies, and also older people. He supports the vaccine, but adds social behavior, that can be played by ear.
And I'm also saying, make that decision for yourself. Your risk assessment should be different than mine.
It's a drastic difference in messaging compared to previous waves and surges.
The answer is not give up all care right now and just let's spread the virus around. We have to continue these precautions now or we'll lose all the gains we've made.
So why is the tone different now?
Back then, we were seeing hospitals get overwhelmed. Here in Idaho, in fact, we had 2 points in time where we went on crisis standards of care. Our hospitals were full. We had people dying. We had to cut back. We're not seeing that today, thank God.
We've seen people lose trust in public health.
Oh, yeah.
That as maybe the tone's changed a little bit about this, is there a concern that that's going to further push that and people be further skeptical?
I am very, very concerned about that because the public health system at large, CDC, World Health Organization, they caved a bit to this because this did become ideological. It did become political. And public health should never be that way. It should be telling people the facts.
Is there an example you're comfortable sharing? Like, what do you mean by that?
It was airborne, which meant whatever was sharing a common air system, we were at risk even if we were further than 6 feet apart.
Even if I'm at a restaurant and I'm sitting down?
Yes.
I thought once you sat down, COVID couldn't get you at a restaurant. So that was nonsense the whole time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They were very hesitant to clarify this, and I have my suspicions.
But Pate knows the definitive outcome.
It undermines confidence in you.
And he's confident today in a case-by-case approach to protect kids, protect the elderly, and use your best judgment.
Maybe at times when there is high transmission, maybe you don't want to go to a real crowded place and be around a lot of people that you don't know that they're taking precautions, and you don't know whether they would show up there if they were sick.
Pate's primary concern is for people based on long COVID, long term, what we don't know. With every subsequent reinfection, Pate says long COVID is more and more likely, and those lingering symptoms could lead to far worse health risks in the future. He also says, Joe, it could take years, even decades, before we fully understand, or the health community fully understands, what long COVID looks like. We do expect a wave of high infections with the wastewater data we're seeing locally and nationwide, and he says it's just wise to avoid it and be smart. But again, the messaging's a little different than Delta, Omicron, what we've seen in the past.
And it's very interesting to also see how the public perceptions have changed. And you have to also remember, back in 2020 and really through the early days of the pandemic, we didn't know what we were dealing with. Now we have a little more data, but as you highlighted, it'll be interesting 10, 15 years from now to look back on all this.
I'm sure he's eager to do it.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll have him here on the 208. Thank you so much, Andrew. The United States Supreme Court is now allowing the state of Idaho to enforce the state's strict abortion ban, even in medical emergencies. This new ruling comes as a legal fight continues. The Supreme Court justices explain they will hear arguments in the overall case coming up in April at the Supreme Court. Their ruling puts on a hold a lower court ruling that had blocked the Idaho law in specific hospital emergencies. And this is all based on a lawsuit filed by the Biden administration. And the Biden administration argued that hospitals that receive Medicare funds are required by federal law to provide emergency care, and that includes abortion. Previously, a district judge here in Idaho agreed with the Biden administration, pausing the law. Again, though, the United States Supreme Court will take this all up in April. Coming up on Monday, Idaho Governor Brad Little will kick off the 2024 legislative session with the annual State of the State address. Little will speak from the House chambers inside the state capitol in Boise. And the governor is expected to begin his remarks at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and he'll touch on his roadmap for the year and his vision for the state of Idaho. A major component of the address will be his direction on the state budget, something that lawmakers will dive into for the next several months. The address will set the stage for priorities that lawmakers will dive into in 2024. For example, though, last year, Governor Little highlighted improving Idaho education through a collection of ideas and new programs like Idaho Launch. Likely see something similar this year. Governor Little is expected to focus on education, as well as things like property tax relief, public safety, infrastructure, and much, much more. And we will carry the State of the State address live right here on News Channel 7. And our team, we will be also live at the state capitol, getting reaction from lawmakers and state leaders. Governor Little will share his ideas, and we will find out if the State House players like them. Our coverage will be available on KTVB.com, KTVB Plus, and the KTVB YouTube channel. Of course, on the 208 on Monday, we'll have a recap as well. All right, bigger questions time. Yesterday, we told you about a proposed rule change that is on the agenda for the Idaho Republican Party's winter meeting. That'll happen this weekend. The proposed rule change within their political party says any elected official found to have violated the party platform and been censured for a second time could not only lose campaign support from GOP central committees, but also be kept from appearing on a primary ballot for 5 years. And a lot of you had something to say about this agenda item, like Bill J., who wrote in, "It sounds like the Idaho State Republican Party Central Committee is way out of control and now interfering with the rights of the voters to decide who should be on the ballot for voters to decide." Rich in Boise said, "Guess a lot of us lifelong Republicans have been left out of the quote-unquote Big Ten." But Terry brought up a question that we want to address today. She said, he knew GOP proposed rule keeping censured legislators off ballots. I recall GOP candidates running based on freedom. Is this illegal? Well, the question of is this illegal is something that we wanted to clarify. Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain explained to us that the short answer of this whole thing under current law, no. According to Idaho Code 34-404, the state of Idaho is in charge of party registrations when a person runs for office. A candidate doesn't need the permission or the endorsement from a political party to make the primary ballot. So similar to the party affiliation rules that the Idaho GOP had asked the Secretary of State to enforce last year, the state cannot enforce party rules as state law. period. They can't enforce party rules at all. It's not their jurisdiction. State of Idaho can only enforce state laws passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. So the Idaho GOP can pass whatever party rules they like, but if they need legal enforcement from the state, it just won't happen. What could happen, hypothetically, lawmakers could change Idaho law, and then the Secretary of State would enforce it because it's state law. So we will follow this, but it's important to remember that the Idaho GOP rulemaking, again, it's not Idaho law. The GOP can govern their own actions and processes, but if it infringes on state law, that's where you have a problem. And it wouldn't be a Friday without more viewer comments. How about some answering of your questions on the Faces of Hope Foundation moving from yesterday's story? Coming right up for you. Have any other questions? Well, you can text them to us at our number. It's on your screen, 208-321-5614. Don't forget to include your name so we can give you credit, and hashtag the 208 so we know it's for us. Keep them clean, concise, and clever. That's a key to getting on at the end of the show. We'll be right back. We all know the state of Idaho is growing and fast, but now we know how fast with the Idaho Department of Labor's 2023's numbers. We have that and more 208 trivia in today's 411. Here's Abby Davis.
The Baker County District Attorney has identified the man shot by Baker City Police early Tuesday as 30-year-old Justin Burkeen from Boise. The Baker City Police Department says 2 officers stopped a vehicle near Clark and Church Streets. Police say Burkeen, who was a passenger, brandished a gun. That's when officers shot him. Burkeen is still in the hospital. He hasn't been formally charged, but a grand jury will review the case next week. Both officers have been placed on leave. Attorney General Raul Labrador can now get more information on the University of Idaho and University of Phoenix acquisition. Yesterday, a judge allowed the AG to subpoena University of Phoenix in the acquisition lawsuit. In June, Labrador challenged the Idaho State Board of Education's decision to allow U of I to move forward with the purchase of an online school, claiming the closed-door meetings before the public vote violated Idaho's open meeting laws. The subpoena allows Labrador to get documents that show communications between the University of Phoenix and U of I, indicating there was a competition with other governing bodies for the acquisition. But the judge ruled Labrador can't ask who the competition is. The trial is set for January 22nd. The Idaho Department of Labor says Idaho is one of the fastest growing states in the country. In 2023, that growth was more than double the national average of 0.5%. The U.S. Census said in July of last year, the Gem State's population was just under 2 million. That's a 1.3% increase from 2022. You guessed it, it's mainly from people moving here. In fact, 78% of the growth is from transplants. The rest of it falls to the death-to-birth ratio and immigration. All of that makes us the 17th largest state by population. Not too shabby. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
By the end of January, the Faces of Hope Foundation will be gone from the Faces Victim Center in Boise.
Yeah, we're in a state of flux really right now.
Sid Sullivan is the vice president of the Faces of Hope Foundation. They received this letter in December from Ada County telling them they were being evicted.
It came to us as a surprise. We were saddened by that. We felt like there was still room for us to come to an agreement and work some of our differences out, but they chose not to pursue that, and so as a result, we've had to start pursuing an alternative.
That alternative will begin with the project that was already in the works, a Faces Foundation Center in West Ada County. So Faces of Hope Foundation will soon be out of their Ada County location, as Sid Sullivan, vice president of the board of Faces, told us yesterday. And you had some good questions about the story and lead up. And you might have missed the initial story that we ran about all this during the holiday season. So, to the questions. We'll start with Bob. Bob asked, with the county kicking out the Hope Foundation, it sounds like they're trying to sell that building for a lot of money. That's from Bob. And it's a good thought, Bob, but that will not be the case for now. The Faces Victim Center will continue operating, just without the Faces of Hope Foundation as a part of it. So, law enforcement, the prosecutor's office, other community resources like medical aspects, they'll stay at the Victim Center in Boise. Another comment says, I am sad to hear that Faces of Hope is disrupted. I hope that we don't lose that support Ada County so desperately needs. Our community deserves to keep the Faces of Hope protectors and advocates, hoping that there can be a peaceful resolution to the differences. So there is a peaceful resolution in the sense that the Victim Center and the foundations, they are going their own ways. The foundation will still supply legal help, advocacy counseling, Hope's Closet, food for people in need, gas cards, meals, hotel nights, anything like that for the survivors. And the foundation will be in West Ada County by the end of the month. But they are looking to move into a secondary Boise location as well, and they're hoping to announce where that is in the near future. We'll keep you updated. Ingrid asked, what is the position of the Ada County Commissioners on why the lease for Faces of Hope was canceled? Why would Ada County take this action? Ingrid wrote that in, and in the eviction letter sent by Ada County, the county highlights that the foundation, in their opinion and in their perspective, first had not signed and returned the fiscal year 2024 license agreement despite several months of discussions. They also say that the foundation insisted on using the Faces name for its new Meridian location, going against objections from Faces partners that believe the Meridian name and the location will confuse victims and delay services. Commissioners also point to the foundation prominently placing their phone number on the Faces Center website instead of the main Faces number. They said the foundation did that without consulting partners, and they claim it has already caused confusion. So the essential bottom line in the letter, the commissioners, partners, and advocates, they believe that the mentioned issues, it signaled the foundation's shift away from an integrated Faces partnership towards focusing on their own victim services. The Faces of Hope Foundation has a different opinion, but to answer your question, that is the perspective of Ada County.
More of the cold and the wintry weather is on the way. We started out with some of that this morning, but we have warmed up to a comfortable 40-degree range for many valley locations today. And you can see as we look to the west that some of the clouds are starting to move in now with our next system. So they are sitting on the horizon, but I want to tell you about something else that may be on the horizon for us. We could potentially have some very cold air that moves through the 12th, January 12th to the 16th. And it's something that the models are hinting at. And one of the things that it specifically could be potentially something that happens is temperatures below zero and near records during that time frame. And it's still quite a ways away. We still have high uncertainty as to how cold it will be, but what we can say is that it will definitely be colder during that time frame. So these 40s that we're seeing right now could potentially feel like a heat wave in comparison. So the last time we saw temperatures below zero was January 1st in 2022, when we saw a -3-degree low New Year's Day. And the past 20 years, we've seen 17 days below zero, but on average, historically, we've seen 2 days per winter, but you can see that we are getting less of those in these past 20 years. We still do have a very active pattern ahead for us. You can see tomorrow morning, we're expecting those blustery conditions, so feeling cold for you. Tomorrow, we're talking about more moisture in the afternoon, a valley rain snow mix, and then snow. Mountains, we're expecting more snow and some lighter snow showers on Sunday.
Hockey night in Boise. Idaho was on the ice this morning ahead of the 7:10 p.m. puck drop tonight in downtown Boise. The Steelheads sit in second place in the Mountain Division and Western Conference behind the Kansas City Mavericks. And as Idaho launches into 2024 and the second half of the season, they have a familiar face back in the fold. Forward Will Merchant has rejoined the Idaho Steelheads, and he actually began his pro hockey days right here in Idaho. He says he's excited to be back home.
Been kind of a crazy couple weeks here. I was obviously in the UK playing hockey over there, but had the opportunity to come back and play for my hometown team here, and where I started my career, so it's pretty special. 2-3 years ago, I was here with the Steelheads, and then went to Denmark, played a full season over there, and then was in the UK playing about half a year. Like I said, got the opportunity to come back, so it's been good. Yeah, I was keeping in touch with the guys throughout the year, and then coming back, I got back in about May. And I came to most of the series, when they were playing. It's kind of fun to watch. Know a lot of the guys in the team, so it was fun.
What's it like being back here in Boise?
It's great. Yeah, I got a house here. Me and my wife, been here for a while, so it's pretty special for us. Fans are great here. They have been for so long. They've been selling out here pretty much every night, so it's a fun thing to play for. Do the right things out there. That's kind of how I lead by example. Got a target on our back, top of the ECHL right now. So we got to keep it going and get a little reset at All-Star break time and then get going again.
And I'll tell you, the Steelheads looked really good at practice this morning after the loss on Wednesday. And the Steelheads are on the ice tonight for a game against the Reading Royals. Steelies are coming off that 7-3 loss on Wednesday night. And if you're not able to go to the game in person at the Idaho Central Arena, which is something you have to do at least once during the season, you can watch the game right here on Idaho's very own 24/7. That is channel 7.2 over the air. Puck drops at 7:10 with the pregame show on the air with Cam McGuire at 7. And don't forget, you can watch every single home game this season on 24/7. We'll have your comments live right after the break. All right, let's take a look at some of your comments to end the program. This person says maybe it's time for election of representatives and senators in the Idaho legislature to become nonpartisan contest. Bill, I am very interested to see what that would look like if we just had names on a ballot with no political affiliation. Just curious. So this person says, so if I want to nominate Joe Parrish for Republican Senate, if the current GOP does not like you, no good. Andrea, confused in Meridian. So here's the deal. As long as you're a legally qualified candidate, you can register with whatever party you want and run as that party. It doesn't mean the party's going to support you or give you fundraising money, but yeah, you can still run with whatever legally qualified candidate you want to be. So we'll see you Monday.